The unlikely discovery. The stars shone brightly, scattered like diamonds across the vast emptiness of space. The human ship Pioneer traveled quietly through the galaxy, its engines humming softly as it ventured farther from Earth with each passing day. On board, the crew was busy with their usual tasks, exploring unknown regions of space. They had no idea that today would be different, that today they would make a discovery that would change everything. It started like any other day. The communications officer, Lieutenant Mark Larson, was scanning the frequencies for any signs of life. It was part of his routine, a way to pass the long hours spent in the deep silence of space. The Pioneer was far from any known space lanes, lost in the vastness of an uncharted sector. There were no planets nearby, no stars of interest, just empty space. But then, something unusual appeared on his scanner. "Captain, you might want to see this," Mark said, his voice tinged with surprise. Captain Amelia Carter, who was at the command deck, walked over to his station. She looked over his shoulder at the display. It was faint at first, a barely visible signal, but it was definitely there. A signal, and it wasn't anything they had ever seen before. It pulsed intermittently. It sourced far away but unmistakably artificial. "Is it a distress signal?" Captain Carter asked, her brow furrowing. Mark shook his head. "No, it's different. It doesn't match anything in our database, but it's definitely coming from somewhere. It's not natural." Curiosity quickly replaced the calm atmosphere of the ship. The crew knew how rare it was to encounter anything strange in the depths of space, especially this far from known space routes. A signal like this from an unknown source was a mystery they couldn't ignore. "Set a course for the signal," Captain Carter ordered. "Prepare for a detour. Let's find out who, or what, is sending this." The ship changed direction, heading toward the coordinates Mark had identified. The crew was excited, but also cautious. It could be a false alarm, some kind of space anomaly, but they couldn't ignore the possibility of discovering something incredible. They had been alone in the stars for so long, and a chance to make contact with something, anything, was an opportunity they couldn't pass up. Hours passed as the Pioneer sailed through the dark void, its destination slowly coming into range. The signal grew stronger with each passing moment, confirming that they were heading in the right direction. The crew prepared themselves for whatever might come next. The air on the ship was tense, full of anticipation. "Distance to the signal?" Captain Carter asked. "We're about 2 hours out," said Lieutenant Larson, his voice steady, but there was a hint of excitement in his tone. The next few hours felt like an eternity. The crew's minds raced with possibilities. Was this the first sign of intelligent life they had found beyond Earth? Or was it something else, something more dangerous? No one knew, but the idea of encountering another civilization kept everyone on edge. As the Pioneer neared the source of the signal, something unexpected happened. The signal stopped. The faint pulse that had guided them vanished. Silence filled the ship, and for a moment, it felt as if they were back to where they had started, lost in the empty expanse of space. "Did we lose it?" Captain Carter asked, her voice sharp with worry. "It's possible," Mark replied, checking his readings. "But the signal's not gone. It's still there, just not active anymore." The sudden silence made the crew uneasy. Had they made a mistake? Had they wasted precious time chasing a ghost? But then, as quickly as the signal had disappeared, it returned, stronger than before. The crew was jolted by the suddenness of it, and they scrambled to track its location. "There!" Lieutenant Larson shouted, pointing at his screen. "It's coming from that asteroid field ahead." Captain Carter's eyes narrowed. The asteroid field ahead wasn't exactly a safe place to navigate, but the signal was clear. They had no choice now but to move forward. "All right, prepare for a careful approach. Keep shields up. We don't know what we're dealing with." As the Pioneer slowly made its way into the asteroid field, the crew stayed on high alert. The rocks in the field moved in a chaotic dance, some tumbling freely, Others locked in tight orbits around the nearby planet. The ship dodged them easily, but every turn and every shift in direction took them deeper into the unknown. The signal grew louder with each passing second, now unmistakably close. The crew could almost feel it in the air. Something was out there, just beyond their reach. Something that had been waiting for them to arrive. Then, just as they thought they were getting closer, the signal stopped again. This time, there was no warning. One moment it was there, and the next, nothing. Captain Carter's heart raced. "Lieutenant, what's happening?" "I'm not sure," Mark said, his hands moving quickly across his console. "It's like the signal vanished. We've lost it again." The crew sat in silence, their eyes scanning the asteroid field, the dark void outside. They had come all this way, only to be left with nothing. The excitement that had filled the ship moments earlier now faded, replaced by a sense of uncertainty. But just as quickly as the signal had disappeared, something else happened. A bright light, flashing suddenly from the center of the asteroid field. It wasn't a star or a ship. No, this light was something else entirely. Something artificial. "Prepare for emergency maneuvers," Captain Carter ordered. "Whatever that is, we need to get closer." The crew braced themselves as the Pioneer moved toward the light, unknowingly stepping closer to the event that would change their future, and perhaps the fate of the entire galaxy. They were no longer alone in the stars. Something far greater than they could imagine was waiting for them. The light from the asteroid field grew brighter as the Pioneer made its way through the twisting maze of rocks and debris. The crew couldn't believe what they were seeing. The flash had come from deep within the heart of the field, and as the ship approached, the source of the light began to take shape. It wasn't just a simple light, but a massive, glowing structure. It looked like something that shouldn't exist. Too perfect, too symmetrical, in such an unlikely place. Captain Amelia Carter stood at the command deck, her eyes fixed on the large view screen. The ship's sensors were picking up something large and solid in the distance, but the readings were strange. They were unlike anything they had encountered before. The object wasn't emitting any kind of regular energy signature, but the light pulsing from it was undeniable. It was both alien and oddly familiar at the same time. "Lieutenant Larson, what are we looking at?" she asked, her voice calm but filled with curiosity. "I'm not sure, Captain," Mark replied, his hands flying over the controls. "The scans are picking up a structure, but I can't identify it. It doesn't match any known ship or station design. It's too advanced." The Pioneer slowly inched closer, maneuvering carefully through the asteroids to avoid the dangerous, unpredictable paths of the rocks. The crew was tense, their attention locked on the massive structure ahead. Some of the crew members had their breath held, wondering if they were about to encounter a hostile force. Others could only stare in awe at what lay before them. "Steady," Captain Carter said, her voice unwavering. "We need to approach carefully. We don't know who or what is inside that thing." The ship's engines hummed softly as they drew nearer. As they got closer, the ship's systems began to pick up more details. The structure wasn't a ship. It was a station, but one that seemed abandoned, as if it had been untouched for centuries. Its surface was smooth, almost metallic, reflecting the light from the nearby star. The strange energy pulse that had led them here still emanated from deep within, but there was no movement, no sign of life. "We're getting a transmission, Captain," Mark said suddenly, breaking the silence. "It's coming from inside the station." The crew's eyes widened. A transmission. But from where? The station didn't appear to be operational. "Put it on the speakers," Captain Carter ordered, her heart racing with anticipation. The transmission crackled to life, the static distorting the words. But then, through the noise, a voice became clear. The voice was not human. It was deep, mechanical, with an undertone of something ancient. The words it spoke were incomprehensible at first, strange symbols and sounds that didn't belong to any known language. Then, after a long pause, the voice spoke in perfect English. "We know you are out there," it said. "We have been waiting." The crew froze, a voice speaking to them. No, knowing they were there. It was almost as if the station had been prepared for their arrival, and the message was meant specifically for them. "What does this mean?" Lieutenant Larson whispered, looking to his captain for an answer. Captain Carter's eyes narrowed. She had trained for moments like this, prepared for first contact scenarios, but nothing in her experience had ever prepared her for the complexity of the situation before her. Was this an enemy? Or was it something else? And if it was an invitation to what? "I don't know," she said, her voice steady. "But we're going to find out." She ordered the crew to prepare to dock with the station. It was a calculated risk, a dangerous one. The message had not made their intentions clear, and the situation was growing more uncertain by the minute. But the curiosity, the drive to understand, was stronger than the fear. As they docked, the Pioneer was quiet, the crew tense, every member knowing they were on the brink of something much larger than any of them could imagine. The docking process was smooth, too smooth, almost as if the station itself had activated systems to receive them. The Pioneer's crew watched in silence as the massive doors of the station slowly opened, revealing a dark, shadowy interior. The light that had been pulsing earlier seemed to fade as they moved deeper into the structure. "We've made it," Captain Carter whispered to herself, but even she couldn't hide the anxiety creeping into her voice. What were they about to walk into? And why had this ancient alien station been waiting for them? The airlock hissed as the crew prepared to leave the safety of the Pioneer. The door to the station was just ahead. As Captain Carter stepped forward, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them from within. The vastness of the station's halls stretched out before them, and the eerie silence only added to the unease. "We're ready," Carter said, her voice now filled with a quiet resolve. Lieutenant Larson opened the airlock, and the crew stepped out into the alien station. The silence was almost deafening as they walked into the unknown, each step echoing on the cold metal floors. They passed large, empty halls and dark corridors that seemed to stretch on forever, the walls covered with strange symbols they couldn't understand. "We need to find the source of the message," Carter said, her tone determined. "Let's move out." They continued down the dark hallways, the silence of the station closing in on them. It felt like they were being watched. The strange light from earlier had all but faded, leaving them in the quiet darkness. The crew remained on high alert, their weapons close, but it was clear that the real danger was not what they could see. It was what they couldn't. As they moved further into the depths of the station, Captain Carter couldn't shake the feeling that this was no longer just an encounter with an alien civilization. This was a trap designed just for them. As the crew moved deeper into the abandoned station, their footsteps echoed against the cold, metallic floors. The long corridors stretched endlessly before them, like veins through the body of the ancient structure. The dim lighting only made the place feel more ominous, casting shadows in every corner. Every hallway they passed seemed the same, empty and still, but there was a growing sense that something was watching them. Captain Carter led the way, her hand on the grip of her weapon, though she kept it holstered. The calmness of the crew was admirable, but even they could feel the tension hanging in the air. There was something about this station, something wrong, but they couldn't put their finger on it. The strange symbols on the walls seemed to follow them, almost as if they were moving, watching. Every now and then, the distant hum of machinery would pulse through the walls, but it was inconsistent. It was as if the station was alive, but only half awake. "This place is huge," Lieutenant Larson whispered, his voice hushed with awe. "How is it still standing?" "It looks like it hasn't been used in centuries." Captain Carter didn't respond right away. She was focused, studying the walls and the patterns etched into the surface. The symbols made no sense. They didn't match any known language or script. But somehow, there was a message hidden within them. She could feel it. "We need to find the central hub of this place," she said, her voice low but firm. The source of the signal must be nearby. They moved forward, the silence broken only by the occasional sound of their boots tapping on the cold ground. The air grew heavier with every step, thick with mystery and unspoken questions. The crew was becoming more uneasy, their senses heightened, but there was no turning back now. The hallway ahead widened into a vast chamber, far larger than any room they had passed. A faint blue glow bathed the entire space, coming from a massive pedestal in the center. It was unlike anything they had seen before, a towering structure made of smooth, dark metal, pulsating softly with energy. "Captain, look at this," said Lieutenant Thompson, pointing to the pedestal. His voice trembled with a mixture of fear and excitement. Captain Carter's eyes narrowed as she stepped closer. On the surface of the pedestal were more symbols. These ones were different from the ones they had seen before. They looked more like coordinates or schematics. It was as if the station was telling them something, but they just couldn't read it. "This is where the signal came from," Carter said, stepping closer to the pedestal. She placed her hand on its surface, feeling the faint warmth that radiated from it. Suddenly, the pedestal seemed to hum, and the symbols on its surface began to shift. It was as though the metal was alive, reacting to their presence. The room suddenly grew darker, and the humming sound grew louder. The crew tensed, unsure of what was happening. Was it some sort of defense mechanism, or was this just a part of the station's ancient technology? "Captain, get back," Lieutenant Larson shouted. He reached for his weapon, but before he could draw it, a bright light shot from the pedestal. The beam hit the ceiling, and the entire room was flooded with a blinding white light. For a moment, everything went quiet. Then the light faded, and the room returned to its dim state. The pedestal was still glowing faintly, but now, in the center of the room, a holographic map flickered to life. It was huge, stretching across the entire room, showing a vast network of star systems and unknown planets. But what caught their attention most was the central point marked on the map, a massive, pulsing red dot. "Is that Earth?" Lieutenant Larson asked, his voice filled with disbelief. Captain Carter stepped forward, her heart racing. "No, it's not Earth," she said, "but it's close. This is a map of the galaxy, and that red dot is something important. We need to get to it." But even as she spoke, a new message began to play through the speakers in the room. It was the same voice they had heard earlier, but now it was more distinct. The words were clear, echoing through the vast chamber. "You are not alone. We have been watching. The others will come. You will be the key." The voice paused, and the eerie silence returned. No one moved. Everyone was frozen in place, trying to make sense of what they had just heard. "What does that mean?" Lieutenant Thompson asked, his voice barely a whisper. Captain Carter felt a shiver run down her spine. She could feel the weight of the message, the significance of it. Someone, or something, had been watching them, watching humanity. And the others? Who were they? What did this have to do with Earth? "Stay alert," she said, her voice sharp. "We don't know what's going to happen next, but we need to understand this map. There's more going on here than we thought." The crew was quiet, each person lost in their thoughts, trying to make sense of the strange map and the cryptic message. The reality of what they had stumbled upon was beginning to settle in. This station was not just an ancient relic, it was a message meant for humanity. But why? And what did it mean for the future? As the crew continued to study the map, the feeling that they were being watched grew stronger. It wasn't just the station. It felt like someone, or something, was out there, waiting for them. The truth about what they had discovered was just beginning to unfold, and it was becoming clear that this journey was only the beginning of something far bigger, something that would change everything. The air in the massive chamber felt thicker now, as though something had shifted in the atmosphere. The flickering map on the wall cast an eerie glow, highlighting the confusion and fear in the crew's faces. The voice that had spoken earlier still echoed in their minds, And the words "you are not alone" kept repeating, each time more unsettling than the last. Captain Carter stared at the map, her eyes locked on the red dot pulsing in the center. "Are we sure this map is even real?" Lieutenant Thompson's voice broke the silence, his voice barely above a whisper. "It looks too precise, too planned. It doesn't feel like an accident." Carter didn't respond immediately. Instead, she walked over to a console on the wall nearby, tapping a few keys to bring up more information. The screen flickered to life, displaying ancient alien text that she couldn't understand. But beneath it, there was one word in plain, simple English: activate. Activate what? She muttered under her breath, looking back at the pedestal. The rest of the crew was quiet, their nerves on edge. Everyone had heard the voice, and now, with the map revealed, there was a sense of inevitability in the air. Something was coming, and they didn't know what. Before anyone could respond, the entire station began to shake. It was subtle at first, just a slight tremor beneath their feet, but it grew stronger with each passing second. The walls vibrated, and strange mechanical noises echoed from deep within the station. The lights flickered and dimmed, then blazed back to full intensity in a flash. "What the hell's going on?" Larson asked, his voice rising in panic. Carter quickly assessed the situation. "Everyone, stay calm. We're about to find out what this place is capable of." The shaking intensified as if the station itself was coming alive. The sound of grinding metal filled the air, and the crew's grip on their weapons tightened. Was this an automated defense system, or something worse? Without warning, the large central pedestal, which had been quietly humming since their arrival, suddenly emitted a loud resonating hum. The entire room was filled with a powerful, reverberating sound that seemed to come from all directions. The glowing symbols on the walls shifted once more, rearranging into a new pattern that seemed to pulse with life. Then the voice spoke again. "You have awakened us. We are here." A flash of light illuminated the room, and for a brief moment, the crew was blinded. When their vision cleared, they saw something that made their blood run cold. In the center of the map, where the red dot had once pulsed ominously, there was now a massive fleet of ships. They were alien, sleek, and menacing, surrounded by a dark, vast space that seemed almost infinite. These ships were unlike anything the humans had ever seen, each one marked by glowing, shifting symbols that matched those on the walls. They've been watching us," Carter whispered, her heart pounding in her chest. "All along." Before anyone could react, the floor beneath them rumbled with a deep, ominous growl. The crew stumbled, struggling to maintain their balance. Then, the map on the wall shifted again, zooming in on Earth, their home planet. The red dot moved closer, and the symbols around it seemed to form a circle. "This isn't just a message," Lieutenant Larson said, his voice shaking. "This is a countdown." Captain Carter's mind raced as the realization hit her. The red dot wasn't just pointing to a location, it was signaling something. It was as though the galaxy itself was turning its gaze upon Earth, and not in a friendly way. The hum from the pedestal grew louder, vibrating the floor beneath them. Another flash of light, and a small hologram appeared in front of Carter. This time, there was no voice. The hologram was different. It was a projection of an alien, humanoid figure, its face cold and unreadable. It held up one hand, and in the palm was a small orb, glowing with an intense light. The figure spoke, though the words were garbled at first. The crew strained to listen, and the message came through clearly. "Prepare for the arrival. We will meet you soon." With that, the figure vanished, leaving nothing but a lingering echo of its words. The room fell silent. The crew was in shock, each member struggling to comprehend the magnitude of what had just happened. "We've got to get back to the ship," Carter said, her voice steady but filled with urgency. "Now." But as she turned to lead the way back, the station seemed to react to their movement. The walls closed in, and the once clear path they had followed became a labyrinth of shifting corridors. It was as if the station itself had decided to trap them. The crew rushed down the hallways, but every direction seemed to lead them deeper into the station's vast heart. "Stay close," Carter commanded, her voice sharp. "Don't let the station separate us." The pressure was building. Every hallway they turned down, every door they opened, seemed to be a new maze, twisting them deeper into the heart of the unknown. The map still glowed faintly in the back of Carter's mind. The red dot, now pulsing with intensity, was a constant reminder. Earth was no longer safe. As the crew ran, they realized they weren't just racing against time. They were racing against something far worse. The unknown. And the question remained, what awaited them outside? What had they awakened? And what would the alien empire do when it arrived? The universe had just changed, and humanity's place in it would never be the same. The crew was trapped. The walls of the ancient station seemed to shift and groan, closing in on them as they frantically searched for an escape. With every turn, they found themselves facing dead ends or more maze-like passages that only deepened their sense of dread. The walls flickered with strange symbols, the same ones that had been visible in the map and the hologram. The air felt heavier, as if the station itself was alive, aware of their every move. Captain Carter, her pulse quickening, motioned for the crew to gather around. "We're running out of time," she said, trying to remain calm. Her mind raced with the implications of what had just occurred. The alien empire, whoever they were, had been watching humanity for longer than they could have imagined. And now, they were coming. "Do you think they'll attack us?" Lieutenant Thompson asked, his voice low. "We don't even know who they are or what they want." "I don't know," Carter admitted, her brow furrowed. "But whatever happens, we need to get back to the ship. We need to warn Earth before it's too late." The voice of the alien entity that had spoken to them echoed in Carter's mind once more. "Prepare for the arrival. We will meet you soon." It was a promise, not a threat. They weren't going to be attacked immediately. But that didn't mean they were safe. The crew was caught between two forces they couldn't understand. The alien empire, which had shown a strange interest in Earth, and the vast, incomprehensible power that the station itself seemed to wield. The thought of facing both was overwhelming, but they had no choice. Carter turned to Lieutenant Larson, her second in command. "Can you get the main systems back online?" she asked. "We need to know what we're dealing with." Larson nodded, wiping sweat from his brow. "I'll try, Captain. But the station's systems are ancient. The technology is nothing like what we've seen before." With a determined look, Larson moved to a nearby control panel, his fingers moving rapidly over the buttons. The screen flickered and buzzed, and for a moment, Carter thought they were just wasting time. But then, the screen blinked to life, revealing a new map. This one was different. Instead of showing their location, it displayed hundreds of ships, alien vessels, vast and powerful, appearing from deep space. And they were heading straight for Earth. "This is it," Larson muttered, his voice strained. "The fleet is coming, and it's huge." Captain Carter felt her stomach churn as she looked at the screen. The fleet was massive, so massive that it dwarfed anything humanity had ever built. The ships moved in perfect formation, their hulls sleek and dark, radiating a sense of power that made even the station around them seem insignificant. "They'll be here in a matter of days," Carter said, more to herself than to anyone else. She paused, then turned to the crew. "We have to get to Earth first. We need to warn them before it's too late. If we don't, they'll be unprepared for what's coming." Her words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of their meaning. They had stumbled upon a galaxy-shaking secret, and now it was their responsibility to stop the coming disaster. But as they made their way toward the station's exit, the walls began to hum again, this time louder than ever before. The ground vibrated beneath their feet, and a new wave of strange energy surged through the air, making the crew's hair stand on end. Carter's heart raced. What's happening now? Before Larson could answer, the entire room was bathed in an intense, blinding light. The crew shielded their eyes, the light searing through their retinas. For a moment, it felt as if the station itself had come alive, shifting into something else, something far more powerful and dangerous. And then the light vanished, leaving behind only silence. When the crew finally opened their eyes, they were no longer in the station. They had been transported somewhere else, somewhere far beyond their understanding. The vast emptiness of space stretched out before them. In the distance, Earth was visible, small, fragile, and far away. But it wasn't the planet that held their attention. It was what surrounded it. The alien fleet had arrived. Hundreds of ships now hovered just outside Earth's orbit, their dark hulls shimmering against the backdrop of the stars. They moved in a perfect formation, each one more intimidating than the last. The crew stood in awe as the ships seemed to pulse with energy, their power radiating out into the void. Are they waiting for us? Lieutenant Thompson asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Captain Carter couldn't answer. The sight before them was both terrifying and awe-inspiring. The fleet was here, and they weren't going to stop until they made contact. The realization hit her like a ton of bricks. The alien empire wasn't here to destroy Earth. Not yet. But they were here to meet humanity. And that meeting would change everything. Suddenly, the silence of space was broken by a deep, resonant voice. A voice that wasn't coming from any of the ships, but from everywhere at once. You have awakened us. Now, you must face the consequences. The crew froze, their eyes wide in terror. What had they awakened? What did this empire want with them? Before they could respond, the voice spoke again, this time with an eerie finality. The universe will never be the same. The words lingered in the cold void of space, and the crew knew, in that moment, that they were on the brink of something far greater than they could ever imagine. And there was no turning back. Captain Carter stood at the bridge of the ship, staring out at the vast, looming alien fleet that now surrounded Earth. The tension in the air was thick, almost palpable. Each ship in the fleet was larger than anything humanity had ever seen, their dark, smooth surfaces reflecting the distant light of the stars. Despite the silence, Carter could feel the weight of the Empire's presence. It was as if the entire universe had stopped to watch, waiting for something to happen. Captain, Lieutenant Larson said, his voice trembling slightly, we can't just wait here. We need to contact Earth, warn them. They don't have much time. Carter turned to face him, her expression hardening. I know, Larson, but we have no way of reaching them. The station's communications were sabotaged, and the fleet has surrounded Earth. If we try anything now, they'll be ready for us. The truth hit them like a cold wind. There was no escaping the fleet. The aliens were everywhere, and they weren't showing any signs of backing down. In fact, they were waiting for humanity to make a move, to show their hand. And Carter knew that any move they made could be their last. The only thing we can do, Carter said quietly, her eyes scanning the fleet, is figure out why they're here. What do they want with us? Just then, a low hum filled the bridge. The crew turned toward the control panel, where a series of strange symbols began to flicker on the screen. The ship's systems were malfunctioning again, as if the station and the fleet were somehow connected. The symbols swirled and shifted in a pattern that seemed to make no sense, but to Carter, it felt like a message. This is it, Carter muttered. They're trying to communicate. It's time we stopped hiding from them. She motioned for Larson to initiate the communication protocol, hoping beyond hope that they would receive a response. But the moment he pressed the button, the ship's systems went silent. The screens went black, and the crew exchanged worried glances. Something was wrong. Then a voice crackled through the ship's comms, deep and resonant, echoing throughout the room. It was the same voice that had spoken to them on the station, the voice of the alien empire. You have been warned, humans. Do not interfere with what has already begun. Your fate is sealed." The words hung in the air, chilling every member of the crew. It was as if the entire universe had just taken one step closer to their end. "We need to act now," Lieutenant Thompson shouted. "If they're trying to communicate with us, maybe we can break through. If we don't, they'll just keep us in the dark." Carter hesitated for a moment, thinking of the risks. But the truth was undeniable. If they didn't try to communicate, they would never understand the aliens' true purpose. And if the aliens were going to make Earth their target, humanity would need all the information they could get. "All right," Carter said, her voice steely. "Prepare for a full translation attempt. We're going to reach out." The crew worked quickly, entering data and coordinates into the ship's systems. They used every bit of alien technology they could find, hoping to open a channel of communication that would allow them to understand the true nature of the Empire's intentions. Minutes passed in agonizing silence as Larson, Thompson, and the rest of the crew worked feverishly. Sweat beaded on their foreheads, and the air seemed to grow colder with each passing second. They had no way of knowing whether the alien empire would even listen to them. It was possible they were simply stalling, waiting for the right moment to strike. But Carter had no choice but to gamble everything on one last attempt. Finally, the communication systems began to buzz and crackle. The symbols on the screens shifted again, this time forming a more coherent pattern. The crew leaned in, their eyes wide with anticipation. Could this be it? Would they finally learn why the alien fleet had come to Earth? The voice returned, its deep resonance filling the bridge once more. But this time, it wasn't a threat. The words were measured, almost calm, as though the aliens were patiently waiting for them to understand. "We did not come to destroy you. We came to offer you a choice, humans. A choice you must make." The crew exchanged looks of confusion. Offer them a choice. What did that mean? And what kind of choice could they possibly make that would impact the fate of the galaxy? "You are not the first species we have encountered," the voice continued. "But you are the first to possess the power to change the balance of the universe. You must choose. Will you join our empire, or will you resist and suffer the consequences?" Captain Carter's heart skipped a beat. This was not what she had expected. The aliens were offering them a choice to join their empire or fight against them. It was an offer unlike any they had ever imagined. "Why us?" Carter asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Why humanity?" The voice answered, but this time the response felt distant, like the speaker was somehow far away, almost as if they were withdrawing. "Humanity has something no other species possesses, a fire, a drive. It is why we came. Your fate is in your hands now." Before Carter could respond, the communication cut off, leaving them in the dark once again. The crew stood in stunned silence. What had just happened? The aliens had given them a choice, but what would humanity choose? Should they risk everything to resist and fight, or join the alien empire and survive? Carter felt the weight of the decision heavy on her shoulders. The fate of Earth, perhaps the entire galaxy, rested on the decision they made in the coming days. And time was running out. The tension on the bridge was unbearable. Captain Carter stood at the front, staring out into the void of space. The alien fleet still surrounded them, their dark, imposing shapes creating an unspoken pressure that seemed to push in from every direction. She could feel the eyes of her crew on her, waiting, hoping that she would make the right choice. The voice they had heard before, from the alien empire, still echoed in her mind. Join us, or suffer the consequences. What had they meant by join us? What kind of empire were they really dealing with? These questions churned in her mind as she weighed the impossible decision before her. If they chose to resist, it was clear the aliens had the power to destroy them. If they joined, what would become of humanity? Would they lose everything that made them human? "Captain," Larson's voice broke through her thoughts. "We can't wait much longer. The fleet is getting closer." Carter turned to face him, her eyes hardening with resolve. "I know. But this is not a decision to make lightly. This is not just about survival. This is about our future. If we choose to join them, we give up control of our own destiny. If we resist, we risk losing everything. The silence that followed was suffocating. Every crew member had their own thoughts, their own fears, but none dared to voice them. They all looked to Carter, trusting her to lead them through the impossible. "Captain," Lieutenant Thompson said, his voice soft but firm, "we don't have the luxury of time. Earth is counting on us. If we resist, we'll fight, but we need to know what we're up against. If we join them, at least we know we'll survive. But what will we lose in the process?" Carter nodded slowly, taking a deep breath. I know. Suddenly, the comms beeped to life, startling everyone on the bridge. It was the alien voice again, calm and clear. "You have made your choice, humans. You cannot turn back now. You have chosen to resist." Captain Carter's heart sank. She hadn't given the order yet. How did they know? How could they know? "We haven't," Carter began, but the alien voice interrupted her. "We have observed you long enough. Your decisions, your actions, have already sealed your fate. There is no going back." The crew looked at each other in confusion. Carter felt a cold chill creep down her spine. How had they been so certain of humanity's choice? Did they know something the humans didn't? Then the voice continued, and this time there was a hint of something darker in its tone. "You have chosen resistance. So be it. We will show you the consequences of your defiance." Before anyone could react, the screens on the bridge flickered, and a series of horrifying images flashed before their eyes. Earth, the alien fleet, ships moving in formation, preparing to strike. And then, the image of Earth, ablaze. Carter's breath caught in her throat as she saw the destruction unfolding. Entire cities collapsing in an instant, the oceans rising up to swallow coastlines, and the sky turning red with fire. Humanity's home was being torn apart before her very eyes. "No," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "We can't let this happen." The image faded, replaced by the dark shapes of the alien fleet, closing in on them. The screen showed a countdown, a time limit. They had only minutes to act. "This is it," Larson said, his voice tight with panic. "They're about to strike." Captain Carter's mind raced. There was no time left. They had to make a decision, and fast. The choice they'd made to resist had led them here, but now there was no turning back. "Helm," she commanded, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside her. "Plot a course for the heart of the fleet. We're going in." "Captain," Thompson said, his voice filled with disbelief. "Are you sure? We're walking right into their fire." "I don't have a choice," Carter replied, her jaw clenched. "They've already chosen for us. We have to fight. We can't let them destroy Earth. We can't let them think we'll just give up." The crew scrambled to follow orders, their hands moving quickly across the controls as the ship began to shift direction. But as they neared the fleet, something unexpected happened. The alien ships didn't open fire. Instead, they began to form a massive circle around the human ship, trapping them in an impenetrable cage of darkness. "What are they doing?" Larson asked, fear creeping into his voice. The alien voice boomed once again, but this time it was filled with something akin to amusement. "You think you can fight us? You think you can defeat the most powerful empire the galaxy has ever seen?" Carter felt a surge of anger rise within her. "We'll see about that." The alien fleet wasn't just a threat. They were a challenge, and humanity wasn't about to back down. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about proving to the galaxy that humanity would not be cowed, that they would stand tall in the face of the unknown. The crew worked together in perfect unison, preparing for a battle that seemed impossible. They had no idea what they were up against, but they would give it everything they had. As the seconds ticked down, Captain Carter knew that this was the moment that would define humanity's future. Whatever happened next, the galaxy would never forget the humans who fought back, who stood up to an empire that believed itself unbeatable. The battle for Earth was about to begin.